We are going to be looking at the construct of gratitude.
For our purposes, we will be defining gratitude as the quality of being thankful and readiness to show appreciation. Gratitude can further be divided into three hierarchical levels: affective trait, mood, and emotion. As an affective trait, gratitude can be described as one's overall tendency to have a grateful disposition. This is more stable than moods, which fluctuate throughout or across days. Even more transitory are emotions, which are reactions to particular events. For example, feeling grateful after receiving a gift. So for our assessment, we will be specifically measuring gratitude as a trait. In other words, a more stable and general disposition towards feelings of gratitude.
So the development of a measure of gratitude is important for a few reasons. First, gratitude is highly correlated with just overall life satisfaction. People with a higher level of trait gratitude just generally display, or like when tested, display more like happiness with life, even if they are chronically ill. Um, and then, specifically in college students, gratitude is a good defense against the stress of college life. And it could potentially be protective against mental illnesses like anxiety and depression, which are really rampant among college students and like young people in general.
Okay, so now going into the theoretical background of surrounding gratitude, existing literature is pretty diverse because the nature of gratitude can mean different things in different contexts and can be expressed in different ways. It makes the measures of the quality super diverse to conceptualize. First, to explain how gratitude is experienced in the brain, researchers Emmons and Mikulo described it as a two-step cognitive process that first recognizes a positive outcome, then recognizes that there is an external source for that positive outcome. Then further research has presented gratitude as a moral virtue in which basically the quality and principal foundation of being gracious, gratuitous, my bad. Major foundations that constitute gratitude as a moral virtue include affective trait for gratitude, gratitude related behaviors, like thankfulness, grateful emotions, and attitudes toward gratitude. The benefits of this viewpoint is that it captures complexities of how different people experience and express gratitude through their behaviors. And then there is gratitude as an emotional experience with three hierarchical levels, like we'll be discussing in this presentation: affective trait, mood, and emotion. So affective trait is more permanent and can be identified as someone who has a grateful disposition or shows their gratitude in every aspect of their life. Moods are those can bounce between long and short term, and emotions are just short term reactions to an external source. Okay, and other variables regarding the construct of gratitude. Another branch of it as a trait is the disposition to experience gratitude. So this is like how likely someone is to experience, just basically how likely someone is to experience gratitude. This is different from the other definitions in that it may not include specific behaviors, like writing thank you cards or showing gratefulness like that, but is more implicit. So the way that this is measured is by using the gratitude, resentment, and appreciation test, which is also known as the GRAT scale. And this is just another survey used to measure gratitude as a trait, or disposition towards gratitude. It uses a Likert scaling method and asks questions like, life has been good to me, or I couldn't have gotten where I am today without the help of many people. And people would rate their agreeableness on like a scale of 1 to 5 with how they feel towards that statement. And it's based on the GQ scale, which has been proven to have good internal reliability, meaning the participants give consistent answers every time, no matter how the researchers ask the questions. So the GQ test also found correlations between gratitude and other positive traits like appreciation, optimism, life satisfaction, hope, spirituality, religiousness, forgiveness, and empathy, and pro-social behavior. However, to be clear, these traits are not the same as gratitude. For example, one study defines appreciation as acknowledging the value and meaning of something, whereas gratitude expresses thankfulness and readiness to show appreciation for and return kindness. Additionally, origins of gratitude have been linked to parenting style, religious affiliations.
So the purpose of our study is to create a reliable and valid measure of gratitude, specifically for college students. If this measure is found to be reliable and valid, then it can be used to predict behaviors that may help those suffering from issues like chronic stress, anxiety, depression, or other chronic conditions.
So given that we are trying to measure gratitude, we want to ensure that our test is homogeneous and that each question measures the trait gratitude. So in order to show that our survey has good internal reliability, participants should answer the same way for each question. For example, participants high in gratitude should show grateful responses across all questions on the questionnaire. So in response, we will be measuring internal consistency, or an estimate of inter-item consistency using Cronbach's alpha. We will calculate this from the pairwise correlations between items in SPSS, and Cronbach's alpha will measure the degree of correlation among all the items on the scale. We will also be measuring test-retest reliability by having our participants take our measure on 2 separate occasions. So for our validity procedures, our goal is to ensure that our test truly measures gratitude in the way that we think it will. So ideally, scores obtained on our measure will be consistent with scores obtained on existing measures of gratitude. So to determine this, we'll be measuring construct validity. Construct validity is a comprehensive measure of validity that analyzes how scores on the test relate to other test scores and measures, and how scores on the test can be understood within the theoretical framework for understanding the construct that the test was designed to measure. And we want to measure this type of validity in our gratitude measure because construct validity has been viewed as the most unifying concept for all validity evidence. So other varieties of validity all fall under it. And more specifically, we want to ensure that our measure is actually measuring gratitude in the way that we think we are. For example, if students score high in gratitude on the gratitude, resentment, and appreciation scale, they should also score high on our gratitude measure to ensure that our measure is valid.
So the participants in our study, they were originally 47 undergraduate students, but only 45 of the participants had data that could be used because 2 of them didn't complete the entire survey that we put out. So all the students were in the Psych 1 and 2 classes at Santa Clara University, which primarily consist of underclassmen. And the study was specifically designed knowing that we had this available sample in mind, which is why it targets gratitude in college students rather than overall in general.
Procedure-wise, just given the state of the world, we kept it pretty straightforward. Our test was administered alongside the GRAT and all the other tests of our classmates on Qualtrics, which was sent out to students, and then they were asked to actually take the test again, although a large portion of them did not. And then once we got all of our data, we used SPSS to analyze it for internal consistency and construct validity using the measures that were previously talked about.
Okay.
So in terms, oh, sorry.
Going? Okay. So college gratitude as a measure. As we stated previously, we've created the college gratitude measure or to measure college students' dispositional gratitude. And we'll be doing this by examining their ratings towards different aspects of gratitudes like academic, peers, physical, mental, and mentors. So they will take a questionnaire with a series of 10 questions to determine their alignment with gratitude as a characteristic/trait. And we are using the Likert scaling method, similar to the GRAT scale, that uses a mix of frequency and agreeableness responses, such as never, strongly disagree equals 1, and always and I strongly agree equals 5. So we'll also include both positive and negative items as a way to keep the participant engaged with the exam or questionnaire. And our questions were developed by surrounding them around those different aspects that I said previously, academic peers. So yeah.
So in terms of evaluating construct validity, as we mentioned earlier, we'll be using the GRAT measure of gratitude. And to test whether our new college-oriented gratitude test truly measures dispositional gratitude, we'll be integrating the GRAT scale into our survey. So the GRAT short form is a 16-item scale designed to measure an individual's dispositional gratitude. So for evidence that our new measure is valid, we would want to see that a positive correlation between scores on the GRAT and scores on our new measure. And this is an example of just a few of the questions on the GRAT scale.
So for our preliminary analysis we did with some of the descriptive statistics after we had collected all of our data, we found that because our scale ranged from 10 to 50, given the Likert scale we used and the number of questions, our mean was 41.02 with a standard deviation of 4.081, which indicates a relatively high level of gratitude within our sample. And the skew of our data is negative 0.078, which divided by the standard error of skewness is negative 0.022. And because this falls between the boundary of negative 1.96 and positive 1.96, the data is normally distributed in this regard. And then the kurtosis of our data was negative 0.457, and divided by the standard error of kurtosis, that's 0.65, which also falls within the negative 1.96 and positive 1.96 bound. So the data is also normal in regards to kurtosis. And then this is our histogram of the frequency of the data that we collected, of everyone's final gratitude score based on the questions that they answered. So the distribution is relatively normal. And though the scale does go from 10 to 50, which is the x-axis is slightly, it doesn't show every value, but it is normally distributed. And then, so the internal reliability is the consistency of the results across items within a test. And for this measure, we found the coefficient alpha of 0.710, which is acceptable within the range of internal reliability. And then for our retest reliability, which again, not everyone did take the test a second time, but for the participants that did, we got a retest reliability of 0.846, which is relatively strong. And this means that when people took the test the second time, they generally answered the exact same way as they did the first time. And this value that we found for reliability is significant at the 0.01 level. So overall, we got pretty good reliability for our measure of gratitude.
Okay, and moving on to our validity results, we determined that the correlation between our questionnaires measurement with the GRATS questionnaire, which is the internal validity, was relatively low, Pearson correlation of 0.405 with a significance level of 0.003. And this suggests that our test was not very high in internal validity. This may be due to because we weren't measuring the gratitude the same way the original GRAT scale measured gratitude. And considering our significance level was at 0.003, this does indicate that our validity measures did have an impact on the results of our data. And just a summary of our findings, based on our statistics, college students at Santa Clara generally score high in gratitude with an average mean of 41 out of, I think the highest was 50, I think. Yeah, so they generally score high. We also have strong internal and retest reliability, which means that our questions were consistent with what we were measuring and participants were consistent with their responses. However, we did calculate a low validity score, which means our test may not have entirely measured what we were supposed to be measuring since it didn't have the same correlations as the original gratitude questionnaire. And we propose that this may be due to the fact that we were specifically looking at college students' dispositional gratitude. So our questions were worded a little bit differently, as opposed to the GRAT scale, which included like all age groups, not just college students. So considering we established strong reliability but weak validity, it suggests that we only fulfilled half of our study's purpose.
And so obviously there are some limitations to our assessment. For one, our sample size was limited to freshmen, and all these freshmen were psychology majors at SCU, making it a convenient sample. We also had much less students take our reliability test retest measure than our original measure. And this low number of students didn't give us enough variability or power to fully gain a comprehensive view of this type of reliability, thus restricting our reliability coefficient. And this makes our results not as powerful as they could have been had everyone taken the measure 2 times. And another limitation stems from the nature of self-report surveys. Given the rise of gratitude in popular culture, people generally understand it as a desirable and essentially good trait to have. So thus, the social desirability bias may have influenced participants' responses. So participants often want to present the best versions of themselves, or at least a version that's socially acceptable. Therefore, students think that the right response is to say that they're grateful, or they feel that they should feel grateful for their classes or friends. It may be difficult for them to truly open up and respond honestly to certain questions. And then students also took our measure along with all other Psych 144 group measures, contributing to a possible respondent fatigue, affecting the validity and accuracy of responses. And then finally, we only used 10 questions for our own measure and a shortened version of the GRAT. And so we may not have had enough questions to get a comprehensive measure of gratitude. So this lack of questions also lowers the validity coefficient, because the more questions that we have, the better chance that we have a comprehensive measure of gratitude.
So at the beginning of this study, we predicted that there would be a strong relationship between our new measure and the GRAT measure, making it comparable to some of the previous data on gratitude that we had found through our literature research. Unfortunately, our data displayed a weak relationship between our new measure and the GRAT. However, it did remain reliable. Because of that, it's difficult to say exactly what we were studying given the low validity but high reliability. There is the possibility that we were studying something closer to college satisfaction rather than gratitude in college students. Although I think it would be a follow-up study would be needed to be able to tell exactly what we were measuring. And some ways to potentially improve this measure in the future would be a larger sample size. We were kind of hurt by the small and not varied sample size that we had. As well, a larger question pool could be helpful. It could allow us to find which questions were the most valid and sort of just get the best questions out of a larger pool rather than just having a small set that we had to use all of. And then finally, it would be good to incentivize respondents to return in some way, because the respondent fatigue created a big problem when we were trying to look at test retest reliability. So all 3 of those things would probably hopefully help to create a more valid measure in the future.
All right, these are our sources, and thanks everyone for watching.